but there is zero evidence that Maduro did it in the last few years.
This is kind of the whole point. You're literally defending Maduro in Venezuela right now.
I am not defending Maduro. I am telling you the guy you say is unifying is a pathological liar.
The View co-host Ana Navarro recently appeared as a guest on Abby Phillips' program on CNN, where she faced off against outspoken MAGA commentators Lydia Moynihan and Jason Rantz in a tense and heated panel discussion. And in this segment, we are going to break down key clips from that intense debate featuring Navarro, Rantz, Moynihan, and others, while also sharing some detailed thoughts and reactions along the way. So let's dive into this together and see exactly how the conversation unfolded.
That ugly State of the Union clash, well, it just got a little uglier, because now President Trump is escalating his fight with Democratic Congresswoman Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib. Both had begun shouting when Trump challenged Democrats to stand for Americans while he was speaking about illegal immigration and fraud in Minnesota. Now, in a post today, Trump said that Omar and Tlaib screamed uncontrollably and had the bulging, bloodshot eyes of crazy people. He likened them to lunatics and suggested that they be institutionalized. Then he added, quote, "We should send them back to where they came from as fast as possible." Vice President J.D. Vance also got in the war of words.
They were all looking around for cues from their colleagues because they didn't have the courage to stand on their own. And that, more than anything, Bill, is the saddest commentary on the Democratic Party, that not only will they not stand for the idea that Americans should come first, they won't even have the courage of their convictions. They lean on the person to their left and their right rather than actually have some conviction.
But Omar says that she has no regrets.
And I think many people look at that moment when the president says it is our responsibility to protect Americans, and he does not acknowledge the fact that two Americans, two of my constituents, two of our neighbors were killed. And it was important for me to just remind the American people that the president and his administration was responsible for killing two American citizens.
Congressman Moskowitz, you were in the room last night, right? Was that moment what Donald Trump ultimately wanted and what perhaps your Democratic leadership wanted to avoid?
Oh, yeah, no. The president clearly came in with a strategy to do that, right? His strategy was to try to rage bait people into that fight. He wanted that, and he got it. Look, ultimately, he's not deporting two members of Congress, just like he didn't lock up Hillary, even though that was chanted in arenas, around the country. So, look, he can't fix his poll numbers. He can't turn around the fact that he's underwater on the economy, underwater on immigration, the two issues that helped get him elected. So what he's going to try to do is he's going to try to fight to the point where he tries to make us not an option, right? He wants to just bring us down with him to the hope that might help him somehow survive the midterms. This is the new strategy. He met with his pollsters. They saw where everything is. They can't turn around their stuff. They've ruined it in the first year. So the strategy is to try to bring everybody down in order to survive the midterms.
So Rashida Tlaib responded to Trump. She said, "Can't take two Muslims talking back and correcting him, so now he's crashing out." And then she used the hashtag President Majnoon, which means crazy or insane in Persian.
Yeah, I mean, she also got what she wanted, which was a mistake, I think, for the Democrats to play into that. I actually agree with the congressman. I think the president was setting up Democrats in a really simple and easy way. They shouldn't have fallen for it. It seems pretty easy to stand up and say, actually, no, I support American people first. That is where I stand. And we can have a nuanced conversation afterwards if you want about illegal immigration. But they walked into that trap because it was so easy to set.
Well, but that's not true. I mean, I stand for...
Most Democrats did not stand.
I stand for Americans over non-citizens. And so do all of my colleagues. But just because... It's not the Galactic Senate. Just because the emperor says rise doesn't mean I get up. Like I'm a different.
You rose sometimes,
I'm a different branch of government. I rose for the heroes that were in the gallery, not because the president.
But not for the other point. I mean, you rose because, and thank you for rising. I think in those cases that this is an easy moment to be united, whether it's around Team USA or it's around any of the people who were featured there. But that's sending a message that you agree with the statement or the sentiment, and you chose not to stand.
Well, I'm sure if Joe Biden told Republicans to rise, they would have leapt from their seats.
But to that point, doesn't that happen at every single State of the Union address? The president says something innocuous. The party that is the opposite party doesn't stand. That happens every single year.
Yeah, but I don't feel like these shouting matches used to happen. I mean, they started happening maybe in my memory with Joe Wilson under Obama. I don't like Donald Trump. I don't support Donald Trump, but I am an institutionalist, and I think that there is a pomp and circumstance and gravitas to something like the State of the Union. Does he use it to lie? Yes. Does he use it to divide? Does he use it to attack immigrants? Yes. But that doesn't mean that that two Congress people should be in this shouting match. And look, what he tweeted out today is horribly racist. And I say this as somebody that gets told the same thing over and over again. Go back to where you came from. I can't tell you how many times I open up social media and it says, go eat a burrito and go back to Mexico, because racists are so stupid. They don't realize there's more than one country in Latin America. And I'm not from Mexico. Also, I don't eat burritos. I like tacos. But the fact that what he said is racist and it is horrible, and it's, and it emboldens and it strengthens, empowers racism. My question is, how does it help American citizens to have the President of the United States and two Congress people in a pissing match over stupidity? How does it help them have lower grocery prices? How does it help him have access to healthcare, access to housing? And actually, I think it's, you talk about Donald Trump goading them into this. I think this is really stupid by Donald Trump. I mean, most people use the State of the Union as a launching pad to then go out and sell their agenda and try to have it be a good moment for them. And instead, he's out there in the, in the bottom of the gutter, fighting and being a racist pig. Why?
Ana Navarro understands this well, and in her view, this is exactly who Donald Trump is and what today's Republican Party has become under the banner of MAGA. Because at this stage, she argues there is no real difference between the two, as they operate as one and the same, and anyone who proudly identifies as a Republican now is essentially aligned with MAGA and openly devoted to Trump. But she says this behavior is consistent with who Trump has always been, someone who constantly lowers the tone of public debate, someone widely seen as insecure and quick to lash out at others, and someone who, in her opinion, lacks meaningful accomplishments from his administration to proudly point to. So instead, he and his allies like J.D. Vance promote what they describe as major successes, even though many Americans do not believe those claims, which is reflected in polling that often places Trump's approval in the low 40s and sometimes even around the mid-30s depending on the survey, with roughly 30% of the country firmly committed to him and unlikely to question anything he says, while a much larger portion, around 65 to 70%, strongly disapproves of him. And she argues this situation did not begin with Trump alone, but that he intensified divisions that had been building for years by pouring fuel on an already burning fire, while accusing the Republican Party of spending decades engaging in attacks and provocation rather than offering policies that appeal to a broad majority of Americans, often labeling Democrats as enemies of the people or branding them as communists. And as one observer recently put it, after years of repeatedly using that label against Democrats, who are largely seen as a centrist party, many voters began to doubt whether the word even meant what it was claimed to mean. So according to this perspective, Trump has dragged political discourse into the gutter, as Navarro describes, and the pressing question now is whether there is any realistic path back to a more stable and respectful political normal in the future.
Can I just ask this question? Is it asking too much to expect the President of the United States, the Commander-in-Chief, to set the tone in the room for the State of the Union?
Yes, it's asking too much.
Okay, but
It's asking too much.
it had to be awful tough. I talked to a lot of members of Congress about attending versus not attending. Both of the Congresswomen who the President, the Commander-in-Chief, have been after for a while now.
Yeah, that's true.
Were in the room, in their seats, on behalf of the people that they represent. I served as a law enforcement officer for a lot of years, and to even ask or make a statement that you need to protect this group first over another group. When I was on the street, if somebody needed help, I didn't check their citizenship before I helped them. So the president started off trying to divide, which he does so well, the nation, right? And you want to talk about protecting Americans? That's exactly what Ilhan Omar was doing, talking about 2 U.S. citizens who were killed under very questionable circumstances in her district.
Is it fair for her to raise that? I mean, Trump is asking about protecting Americans. Is it fair for her to raise the 2 Americans who were killed?
Well, I think Trump's entire speech was actually pretty unifying. I think Donald Trump's superpower is positioning himself as the common sense guy who's advocating for positions that the vast majority of Americans want. And there was one moment at the beginning where he invited the USA hockey team. And of course, the crowd went wild chanting USA, USA. And then the camera panned to Rashida Tlaib, who appeared to be mouthing KKK. And then again, you had another moment where Trump says, stand up if you want to support American citizens over illegal aliens. And instead, Ilhan Omar is screaming and heckling the president. And those are the best kind of sound bites and visuals that the GOP can have for the midterms, because a lot of people might not like Donald Trump and might be kind of hemming and hawing. And then they look at the alternative and they say, oh, well, this really angry woman, gosh, I don't know about her. So that's what Trump set out to do.
That was my question.
Highlight the 80-20 issues.
In response to his own question, is it fair for the Democrats to respond, why, yes, we do care about American citizens, including 2 that were killed.
Yes, it is
by
fair, but not
federal
in that
officers.
venue.
But
It
was
is fair, but
surprising
not at
to
that
me
moment.
that the President of the United States did not even mention the 2 U.S. citizens that were killed in Minnesota. How do you do the State of the Union, because you care about Americans so much, and not even mention the 2 people who lost their lives on the streets of America at the hand of federal agents?
One who tried to run over.
But how
an
do
ICE
you
agent
not
in
even,
a
you
moment.
can do your commentary all you want, or, critique, but how do
State
you
facts.
not mention that 2 people died in that environment? And the president was one of the most unifying speeches. The president who said, look at the Democrats, aren't they crazy? He obviously does not understand that when he won election, he is supposed to represent all people.
When you go through some of the moments he went to, right, he pointed to a little girl, Delilah, who was almost killed by an illegal alien, miraculously came back. She was there with her dad. When you have Democrats who won't stand and applaud her recovery, yeah, I think that's
Sadly,
crazy.
people are killed in America every day. Sadly. And the majority of them are killed by U.S. citizens. So whether an
I don't understand that point.
undocumented
That
immigrant,
point-
I'm saying
whether
this is
it's an undocumented immigrant or a
curtailing
U.S. citizen
fentanyl,
who's the
about supporting
perpetrator,
No, here's
the
the
bottom
difference.
line is somebody has died or someone has been
One died as a
seriously
result
injured.
of bad policy that was in place for 4 years, allowing people to come into this country unvetted illegally. And if we had border policies that actually worked, those people wouldn't be here and those deaths would not have occurred. That's the difference. So when you can point directly to policy, I think that's obviously well within the scope of any president, Democrat or Republican.
Yeah, by the way, it went so well in Minnesota that the president sidelined his secretary, skipped her in the cabinet meeting, replaced her with Tom Homan, who then pulled everybody out. So yeah, it worked real well that they abandoned it and left. That's number one. Number two is, look, Donald Trump there's a lot of verbs and adjectives to describe. Unifying is not one of them. He doesn't even think he's unifying. That's not his strategy.
Two-thirds of the people who watched the speech thought it was very positive, and they liked it.
Actually, it was the
didn't see those
lowest
stats.
positivity in 20 years
Yeah,
of
and
any.
I think that's right.
Listen,
That's right.
and he patently, bold-faced lied about illegal immigrants and criminality. He said that the man who had killed the Ukrainian woman in Charlotte, North Carolina, Irina, was an undocumented immigrant who had been let in by Biden. That was a lie.
That's
He's a
not
U.S.
true.
citizen. He was born in North Carolina.
You're right. He misspoke, but it was another
12,000
policy failure that led to him killing
that was
her.
purposeful. Him using illegal immigrants as the boogeyman. He said 12,000 murderers had been allowed in by Joe Biden. That's made up. He's making that number up and conflating
We don't
numbers.
know.
That is no.
We don't know. There's
we know.
maybe
We do
20
know
people who
we
came
do
across
know
the
because
southern border.
ICE has put out
Yes.
numbers.
No,
we
we do
actually
know.
do know that that's not
We
true.
do
It is a
know.
lie. Listen, he lied over 20 times. Daniel Dale from CNN has done the fact checking, and a lot of those lies were about immigration. He said Maduro opened up the prisons and the insane asylums. But there is no evidence, zero, that Maduro did that. Castro did it in 1980. But there is zero evidence that Maduro did it in the last few years.
This is kind of the whole point. Is you're literally defending Maduro in
I am not
Venezuela right
defending
now.
Maduro. I am telling you the guy you say is unifying is a pathological liar.
I don't think it's defending Maduro to just point out that what Trump said about Maduro is not true, okay? That's not a defense of Maduro. It's just a defense of
He's
facts.
so unifying. I feel unified. Don't you feel unified? I mean, I feel so unified that the president, he's just unifying everything. It is painting us.
We are
with
being brought together every moment of every day.
We're just dripping.
All right, next for us.
Lydia Moynihan often uses a strategy that many MAGA voices repeat again and again on programs like Abby Phillips' show, where when Ana Navarro presents data showing that the number of violent immigrants is not as high as Donald Trump and his MAGA allies claim, Moynihan responds by saying that no one truly knows the real number and questions how anyone can be certain, even though by that logic any verified statistic could be dismissed, such as annual traffic fatality numbers in the United States, which are carefully tracked by official agencies. Yet MAGA commentators like Moynihan, along with figures such as Jason Rantz, Scott Jennings, and Ben Ferguson, often frame debates around personal belief rather than documented evidence, despite branding themselves as champions of facts over feelings. And in their view, if even one immigrant commits a violent act, then it becomes proof that all immigrants are dangerous. While Rantz repeats claims that Renee Good attempted to run over an ICE agent, and treats it as an unquestionable fact even though there has been no clear public evidence confirming that version of events. But in this style of argument, what matters most is perception rather than proof. And when Navarro states that Trump has a long record of false statements with thousands of documented inaccuracies, the claim is brushed aside as merely opinion. While Moynihan describes his State of the Union address as unifying, and Jared Moskowitz counters by pointing to reports showing It received one of the lowest approval ratings for such an address in 2 decades, illustrating the clash between measurable data and personal interpretation, and regardless of what Moynihan or other MAGA commentators argue on Abby Phillips' show, polling consistently suggests that a significant majority of Americans disapprove of Trump and reject much of his agenda, with estimates often placing that opposition at around 2/3 of the country or even close to 70%, which supporters describe as a clear indicator of widespread concern about his leadership. So viewers are invited to share their thoughts on whether they agree with Navarro's criticism of Trump's State of the Union or side with MAGA defenders like Moynihan and Rance, and to engage with the discussion by liking and subscribing for more analysis.